with my electric sander, and I forgot to get a wet rag. So typically you would just use a wet rag to wipe it off a little bit, like a damp rag, not wet. And I really like these. You could cut up t-shirts, but these just keep going and going, so that to me they're worth it to get a bag of rags from Home Depot or Lowe's. But today I'm going to use something that is kind of my secret weapon because I use it for a lot of stuff. Baby wipes. My youngest is 5 years old, and I still buy baby wipes because I use them to paint a lot. And so I'm just going to wipe it off with baby wipes today. I wouldn't typically do that. Let's get some of the dust off of it. Take a dry rag and get a little bit off of there too. So there are a lot of times that I use my electric sander exclusively. Again, I hate sanding, so I like the electric sander. Today I'm going to use this sanding block because there are a lot of fine details on this, and I want to get some of those. So I'm just going to kind of go over. You can see there's a little circle right here. Just going to go over that a little bit. Again, doesn't have to have any kind of pattern to it. Just going to go around these. Make them look a little bit worn with these ones too. A little bit of the leg. A little bit here. These. Again, you don't need to go in a pattern. You just kind of randomly go over it. I was able to get some good distressing with my sander, just kind of swooping over it a little bit in random spots. I like the spots over here better that I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to go over these again with this sanding block. Now you can just use regular sandpaper, but I like these because you can wash them and rinse them and let them dry and use them again. Go over that little circle over here. Let's see, did we miss this one? Yeah, just kind of go over that to give it a roughed up look. I like the look that I got here and here with taking my electric sander over it. Okay, I think we have it roughed up enough. You can go heavier or lighter if you want. A lot of people, when I do custom projects for them, they want me to just go around the edges, and so I can do that as well. And you still get a distressed look from that. If you want a rustic look or shabby chic or farmhouse. Okay, so the next step that we're going to take is something I didn't know about when I first learned to do this, and that is applying a glaze. There are a lot of options you have with Dixie Belle to get a similar look. There's wax, the colored wax, when you do that, it kind of makes it a lot darker. And there is also Dixie Dirt that you apply over a clear wax. And that doesn't give you as much of a rough look, but it does give you some texture to your piece. And then, of course, we have glaze. Now, when I first learned to use the glaze, and here I'm using the 4 ounce of Dixie Belle's Van Dyke Brown, and again, it goes a long way. When I first learned to use it, and this is how some people do it, I learned to put it on some kind of lint-free cloth and dip it in and apply it. Now for me, that was not how I preferred to do it because I didn't want it all over the piece. I just wanted it in little spots on the piece. I didn't want it to completely change the color of the piece. So I will tell you now why baby wipes are my secret weapon. And that is because when I mess up when I'm painting, I can use it to remove things. So I'm going to take this baby wipe and I'm just going to wipe this glaze off because I don't like it here. Sometimes it doesn't come completely off and it still changes the color a little bit of what you're doing, but usually the baby wipe will take it off. So when I do this next method that I show you, my baby wipe is going to help me because if I get a spot that I just don't like at all, I just wipe it right off. Now, if you're going to use the baby wipe for that, you have to move quickly. It's not going to be able to be wiped off forever. You have about 30 seconds to a minute to wipe it off of there with your baby wipe. All right, so just clean that area off a little bit again, dry it off. So it took me some practice to see how I actually like to get glaze on my piece, and I prefer to use a sponge brush. And again, it took me some practice, and even still I don't always get the technique out the way I want it, but again, I have my baby wipe so I can fix things. Alright, so I just dip it into my glaze, just get a little bit on there, and I even just brush it off a little bit. And the brown is probably the one that's going to show up the darkest whenever you use Dixie Belle glazes. You can also use Dixie Belle black glaze, and they also have a grunge gray glaze that is their most popular, and it's really neat looking the way it comes out. If you want to see it, you can check out some pieces on my page or at the Merchant Village, and you will see that it has a really neat look to it. Okay, so I'm going to take my brush and my sponge brush. I'm going to start at an edge, and I try not to start in the middle because it kind of gives it a weird pattern that shows that you're using a brush. So I will just go this way and kind of spread it like that. And you see that it doesn't cover the whole piece. It just covers a portion of it. And they also say, and it's true, that whenever you are putting glaze on a piece or antiquing a piece, again, you want to work from the outside in. You want it to be darker on the outside and lighter on the inside because that's how it's going to naturally age. So when you put your glaze on with your sponge brush, you then want to wipe it with a cloth, a lint-free cloth. And if I don't like how something is, again, I take my wipe, and I don't really like this spot right here, so I'm just going to take that off and just kind of, I don't like how thick it is, so I'm just going to go over it a little bit. I like when it turns out more like that. So that's usually the part that I keep. So I will go over some other parts of this so you can see what I do. I don't think we'll have this whole thing on here, but I'll take this up and go down. And again, it kind of gets it on some of it, and it'll catch the parts that are sticking up. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'll go around like this. Go up and down on this. And the parts, I love woodwork because it stands out. It makes it really easy to glaze and get that antique look. I like to dip in my lid too because it doesn't get you maybe the perfect amount of glaze on there. It doesn't go deep into your jar and get you too much glaze. Okay, so I'll take my lint-free cloth again, make sure it's not a part that paint is on, and just kind of rub it lightly too. You don't want to totally rub it really hard because sometimes you're just going to rub the glaze right off, and there's no point of putting it on if you're not going to have any glaze on there at all. Okay, so you might not be able to see this from the camera view, but it is giving it more of an aged look. Let me turn it. I don't see any spots that I don't like there. So let me turn it this way. See if I can show you again on this part. Just gonna pull it that way. And see, you don't press real hard with this. You just kind of lightly touch it, and it gives it kind of an aged look. Now this is a technique that I did come up with this myself. I don't know if other people might use it, but this is just what I like to do. It's the look that I like to get. I almost like to try to make it like you're getting wood grain in there. So let's see, do I not like any of this? Yeah, that part's a little thick for me. And that up there. Got a little brush mark over there, so I took that off. Again, baby wipes are great. You can also use them if you get some paint on glass or on part of the piece that you don't want paint on, and really quick, go and use your baby wipe and wipe it off. Okay, so I'm going to finish this, and then I will show you the next step. So I have my table all distressed. I did the sanding and I did the glaze. Now I am going to stain the top. It's a look that's pretty popular now, and I happen to really like it. You may be thinking, if you're going to stain the top, why did you paint the top? Because it's really hard to sand it again. Well, I agree. I hate sanding. And so I have fallen in love with this product that I found this year, and it is gel stain. And with gel stain, you do not have to sand before you use it. You can apply it right on top of the piece of furniture. I don't like how it turns out as much when you do that, right on top of the wood finish. You also can apply it after you've sealed something, and it gives it more of a swirly look. I like to apply it right on top of unsealed chalk paint. That's the look that I like the best. And so that is what I'm going to do. The chalk paint gives it something to adhere to. All right, so this is Dixie Belle's Georgian Cherry No Pain Gel Stain. This is their smallest can, and this is really all you need. It goes a really, really long way. I'm going to have a ton of this left when I'm done with it. They also have espresso, and they have, I believe, a walnut color. They also have something called Voodoo Gel Stain. Same concept, but it's water-based. This is oil-based, and the Voodoo Gel Stain is water-based, and I think there's a teal color with that. There's also a gray, and then some browns. All right, and one thing I wanted to mention to you that I forgot before I go on while we're talking about how far things go. With my mint julep, it was about 2/3 of the way full whenever I started with it, and you probably can't see very well, but I still have a good bit of paint in there, about half full still, and I painted that whole table with that. So Dixie Belle does really go a very long way. Okay, so I'm going to take another sponge brush. And you can wash these, by the way. I kind of soak them for a couple hours and then just squeeze them out, and you can use them over again. I dip it in there, and I got some on my brush, and you just start slapping it on. And so you get a nice dark stain there. It's giving me like a chocolate brown color. And when I'm done with this, I am going to stencil on top of it. It's one of my favorite looks also, is to put a stencil on top of a wood look. Now granted, you don't see as much wood grain as you would with regular stain, but it still gives you more of a wooden look than you'd get if you just painted. And I am sure there are also tutorials online that will tell you how to get more of a wood look with gel stain. Okay, so now I have got my top stained, and I will show it to you. It's a very nice, shiny, stained look. And again, that's the Georgian cherry. And once you get all your stain on there, you want to get one of your rags again, and you want to make sure it's a clean one. And just like with regular stain, you're just going to wipe it dry. You want to try to keep it in an even pattern though, because this is a little bit more likely to get kind of a smudge on it. But usually if you just go back over it and just go straight back like that, you should be okay. So again, I wiped all of this with a rag to get the excess off, and that is what you have. So it makes me very excited because I don't have to sand, because I hate sanding. Okay, so the next time I do a video, I am going to show you what I'm going to do with this. And I am actually going to show you how to use the slick stick, which allows you to paint smooth surfaces, because I'm going to paint the glass. I'm going to use the gel stain again on the wooden part, and then I'm going to show you some stenciling techniques. So that's what we're going to do with this part. But for this one, we still need to seal it. With chalk paint, you usually need to seal it. Now with Dixie Belle, you don't have to seal it, but if you don't seal it, you need to let it cure for 30 days. And that means you don't put anything on it, you don't bump into it, you don't do anything rough with it. You have to be very careful with it so that it doesn't chip for 30 days. I typically like how it looks when you seal it. I like how it brings the color out. And I just get nervous, so it just makes me feel better to put a sealant on it typically. But again, with Dixie Belle, you do not have to seal it. You just have to let it cure, which means that it's going to dry completely. When we feel it dry, it's really not dry completely. Even though it's not coming off on our fingers, it takes 30 days for it actually to be completely dry. So there are a couple options for sealing, and you can use wax to seal. If you're going to use wax to seal something, it's got to be something that you're not going to get heavy use out of. It's got to be something like an end table, or something that's just going to sit there most of the time and you're just going to put things on top of it. If you want a little bit more of a durable seal, Dixie Belle sells clear coat, so you can use that. And then if you want a really durable seal for things that you know you're going to use heavily, you're going to put things on top of it, you're going to pull drawers in and out, you're going to just really risk putting dents in it, then you would want to use gator hide, which is what I use pretty often because, again, I get nervous, and so I want to have the most durable seal on it. This is great for if you want to do your kitchen cabinets or your countertop or your tabletop, because you know you're going to get heavy use out of that, and you don't have to be afraid that you're going to get nicks all through your paint job. And I really wish that I would have known about gator hide last year, because I painted my kitchen cabinets last year, although they are doing well. So I am going to use gator hide on this because I know that there's going to be a lot of lifting this up and down on it, because again, this is a tea table and you can use this to serve. All right, so also, I used to apply my sealant with a brush from the double package that I got from Walmart that I told you about in the beginning. But I have since found that you can apply it with a sponge. I follow a chalk painting site, and well, I follow several of them, and people were saying that you can eliminate brush marks by using a sponge. And sometimes there would be problems with the sponges where little pieces would fall off. They say if that happens, then put it in pantyhose, like knee-high or a little footy, and just put the sponge in that and dip it in your sealant, and you won't have any problems. So what I was doing is I was cutting up a car wash sponge. I think they're $1.67 at Walmart, and I enjoyed doing that, but I found that I got sealant all over my hands, and I had to peel it off and scrub it off, and just wasn't always a pleasant feeling. So I love these sponges that Dixie Belle makes because they're double. So you can hold it on this part, and you can seal on this part, and you don't have to worry about getting sealant all over your hands, which is very nice. I like that. You also can wash it. So again, just like the sponge brushes, rinse it out in the sink, squeeze it out, and I like to soak it for a couple hours in water just to make sure all the yucky stuff is out, and then let it dry. So I've used this one 4 or 5 times now. Alright, so I'm just going to take it, put it in my gator hide. Love that name. And notice that all the Dixie Belle names are very southern. So you want to dip it in and you kind of scrape the excess off. You don't want to get too much because it'll pool up and it'll be like this white, sticky, drippy thing. So you just get it on your sponge and you just wipe it on there. I'm not going to seal the top yet. I will seal it with gator hide eventually, but it's not dry yet. So I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'm going to wait for it to dry, and I'm probably going to want to wait 4 to 6 hours for that to dry. Sadding around this. Just make sure I'm getting in all the crevices, which actually is easier to do with this big old sponge than I thought it would be, because it's very flexible, because it's a sponge. And you probably can't see this from the video, but it is just bringing out those details and really making the color pop more. Lift it up a little so I don't get sawdust on it. And that's pretty much how you do it. I don't think you want to watch me seal this whole thing, but that is the last step in your piece, is sealing it. I am sure there are things that I left out, so if you do have questions, you are always welcome to contact me with questions. It's probably easiest to get me through Messenger on Facebook or my email address. So that's it. Thank you.